This video will have spoilers to Mega Man Star Force 1, since this is direct sequel to Star Force 1 and everything. So, I play Star Force 1, you probably should, it's great. I also have a video on that. And also, Legacy Collection has all 3 games, so why the hell not play Star Force 1? Alright then, this is your warning. Okay, you good? Alright, let's go. Mega Man Star Force 2 originally came out in 2007 in Japan on the DS and 2008 internationally. Often cited as the weakest entry of the Star Force series, and only having 2 versions this time, which is for the better. Those versions being Zerker Ninja and Zerker Saurian, with the weird part being the fact that not only are both versions this combination of 2 things, but it's the fact that Zerker doesn't get its own separate release despite supposedly trying to be on the same level as the Ninja and Saurian aspects. I've often seen this entry get constantly compared to Mega Man Battle Network 4, so I'm going to understand of it introduces a lot of new gameplay elements, but people just don't really care for the narrative. Joke's on them. Battle Network 4 is my favorite Battle Network. But it is also the first Star Force game I actually played when I was a kid. Yeah, I didn't play Star Force when I was a kid. So, I was interested to revisit Star Force 2 when it came to this collection, especially learning just how much people seem to despise certain aspects of this title. 2 months after the first Star Force, Geo decided to get this new device called a Star Carrier, a new form of transfer that has new features such as being able to generate these EM matter. With the advancement of EM wave technology, people now have the ability to essentially take EM waves and turn them into a physical form and then store them. So for example, there are people who could have, let's say, a hoverboard device and then just store it in the Star Carrier, or even entire vehicles and stuff like that. It is quite frankly insane the stuff that people can just have now in the world of Star Force casually in their pocket. Although a downside of this is the fact that it deletes all brother bands. I know it's there for gameplay, but it is still weird the idea that this new device just essentially deletes all your contacts, especially with the emphasis of the brother bands in the first title. There are reports of identified mysterious animal attacks, or UMAs, the public calls them, with Geo and Omega Sis finding out that they're actually EM beings, with this new mysterious villain faction being able to EM wave change in the same way that Geo and Omega Sis do in order to become Mega Man, with this villain group having this obsession with the lost continent of Mu, something that Geo and Omega Sis learn about, and also find out that one of the artifacts from this continent looks eerily similar to a Star Carrier, and the main exhibition item, which changes depending on which version you're playing, so if I'm playing Ninja, it's a Shuriken, has this strange power that the villain group wants, but Omega Sis accidentally consumes. From then on, the story takes on episodic format, with there being generally a villain of the week who is offered help by Hyde, a member of the villain faction, who offers these people power in their lowest moment in order to take advantage of them causing chaos and everything, and try to have them take out Mega Man so they can get the artifact from him. While Mega Man's also deal with the fact that since Omega Sis ate the artifact, G was having strange dreams, and there are moments where the two that combine with Mega Man struggle to even control their own body. Another aspect of this game's story is that due to the fact that the villain group are EM wave changing in public, they are creating the EM and real world overlaps, which means more and more people start actually witnessing the heroic efforts of Mega Man, with Geo not wanting to exactly be known as this hero and doing this aspect of getting more and more recognition whenever he helps people with Mega Man, even to the point where people start believing that when they're in danger, Mega Man will be there in order to help them. Something that Geo, once again, really doesn't want to embrace, even if Omega Sis doesn't see the issue of Geo becoming more and more popular by the public. There's even a point where Omega Sis just thinks Geo should just not be hiding his identity, period. Which, okay, Omega Sis, now you need a cooldown. Although it is still weird that somehow Bob Copper and Geo's mom don't know Mega Man, especially since they were standing right there in the ending of Star Force 1 when Geo's friends were talking about how he helped save the world, everything came back safely after dealing with Andromeda. So it is weird how they were there for that conversation. They couldn't have possibly have been whisper talking like Geo normally does with Megasys. So it is weird how they still don't know that he's Mega Man. One thing I am disappointed by is the fact that the EM beings in this time around, these enemy ones, aren't as interesting as the ones in the first game. Sure, the first game's EM beings being from the FMians didn't have much to really go off of, but I like the fact how they tried to twist the grief of the humans from the first game in order to end up using them for their own goal of causing havoc while waiting for the plan to cause Andromeda. But here, the EM wave beings are purposely designed to be way more passive and just used as tools. They don't have much thoughts themselves, and Hyde just gives them to these people in order to cause havoc to attack Mega Man, whether directly or by proxy of him showing up, trying to stop the danger. So it is a bit disappointing in that aspect when it comes to how the game is written. The human hosts this time around are people trying to fulfill a certain goal, but their goals are being done in a shady way, with the stuff they're doing not exactly being something that can be actually supported, with the fact that once their ruses are up, they end up being given an EM being by Hyde in order to cause havoc, in the hopes that the havoc will erupt Mega Man, and then Mega Man will get defeated, and Hyde will get the artifacts. But in this case, it's the fact that the hosts generally just aren't as interesting as the ones from the first game, even if the idea of these people being this kind of individuals who can't fulfill the task on their own, and now they're being given this power, emphasizing the hunter aspect of Link's now being this power source from Bonds this time around. When people now with Brother Ben, it creates a Link power. The higher Link power, the more you get out of society straight up. It's a very understated aspect of this game's writing that the higher the Link power, the more privileges or even just stuff you can get for free in society when it comes to it. So these people are being given the lowest moment where they have nothing with them and being given an opportunity, with one person even trying to view Hyde giving them the EM being as if they now have some sort of bond, which they clearly don't. The issues come in with the fact that just so many instances where you can tell the game is padding out certain things, whether it be the build-up to a villain for the episodic format takes a good while for the characters to realize, but the player knows about it. So it's one of those things where you're just waiting for the characters to realize something is going on here, which does take longer than it does in the first game when it comes to setting up the opponents Geo and Megasys goes up against. Not helping the fact they're also just certain moments that just kind of happen to make an excuse for having the player fight opponents that were in the first game. Like just having a moment where Bud ends up turning back into Taurus Fire under the claim that remnants of the EM being are still within the host, but it's only ever used just to have Mega Man face them and not really used in this way to, let's say, help with the danger, or let's say in this case, Bud using Taurus Fire of his own volition. And that's like the cool aspect of trying to expand things with the fact that in this case, the characters now have to go on this whole entire worldwide trip, going to several different countries in order to, at one point, try and find Geo's friends who have all gone missing. But just one of those aspects where it's a cool idea what they try to do with that, although we'll talk more in the gameplay wise, why it also kind of shoots them in the foot. Solo is the highlight of the new villain faction characters, who's able to EM wave change by himself into the EM being Rogue, with one entire aspect of him believing that bonds are essentially weakness, believing that people only bond together because they can't do anything by themselves, hence reinforced by a narrative of these villains being people who are in a state where they can't do anything by themselves and are now desperate for some power or connection and end up falling for Hyde's temptation. I like this aspect when it comes to Solo and everything, although I see people complain about the idea of How can Solo have this belief that bonds aren't power when it's literally the basis of society? To which the response is, he beats Mega Man. I don't think he needs any more justification for why he believes the way he does. The last narrative complaint I've seen people have for this game is the fact that there are certain characters who don't have faith that Geomegasis can handle the danger going on. To which, I don't know why this complaint is a thing, considering Geomegasis are shown struggling against the villains, even outright losing at certain points, or the fact that not even Omegasis can have the artifact that he consumed, which is now trying to overtake their body. They are shown to be struggling with the stuff going on, so just because some people think, in theory, the danger of the first game is greater, clearly this game is showing these villain group and what's going on isn't exactly as simple. Overall, while I like the writing of Star Force 2, I don't like it as much as Star Force 1, just because I just don't feel like its main subject matter, how they try to relate it to everything else, including Geo, isn't as strong, where the first game, Geo is in grief, and the villains having their grief exploited, ends up really coming together. And while here, you do have Solo, who's the polar opposite of Geo and everything, I just don't think the rest of the villain groups really come when it comes to trying to match Geo's entire situation, everything. I do like the whole entire aspect of essentially trying to twist the idea of bonds and link power and everything when it comes to them, so I do like the villain group, I just don't think they're as strong as the Ephemians from the first title. And there's just the game's padding moments where certain things and revelations could have been gone quicker, especially since there are points where the game will make you go to an area, boot you from the area for the story reason, and then make you go back into the area they just booted you from. And it's like, you didn't need to do that several times. Please stop. Now for the gameplay, with one big change when it comes to exploration, being the fact that this time, when you enter a wave hole, you will actually start on the ground and are on the same levels as all the regular humans, making it so now you can go into their star carrier to find their info just by walking up and talking to them, where you need to use the EM wave roads. But you still have the EM wave roads, but not to the manually go to. I like this change because it makes it simpler to go to the character information when it comes to side quests, although I know it can cause the annoyance of now I gotta try to find exactly which way to go from the ground in order to find the EM wave road, in order to try and find the right path to my destination. It's also the fact that, once again, like Star Force 1, there's not really any shortcuts or anything, and since Star Force 1 had the areas more compact when it came to main locales to go through, here they're a bit bigger and everything, so it can make the idea of not doing everything in one go a bit more annoying of, hold on, I'm trying to retread this path again. The biggest issue when it comes to exploration is the Sky Road, where Mega Man will have to use the Sky Road in order to go to different countries because Geo doesn't have a passport. So this method is a cool idea of going from ground level to sky level. The issue stems from the fact that the shortcuts here are very optional and I think easy to miss because I couldn't find a single one at all, which meant I was retracing the entire Sky Road every single time I needed to have Geo go somewhere else, which starts to get tiresome because of the fact that the Sky Road, depending on how far you're going for the country to go to, is not exactly short. They're not long, but they're not a short trip either. I looked up trying to find any shortcuts, but people either said the shortcuts are either easily missable, or I should be complaining because Bound Network early on didn't have shortcuts. Except for finding in Star Force 2, several entries after Bound Network, so you think the shortcuts would be baked in kind of thing to make it easier, especially when you need to constantly go back to the Sky Road. Much in the story section, there was a point we had to go somewhere, get booted back, and do it again. And yes, in gameplay, that meant going to the Sky Road, getting to a new story location, the story says go back, and then having to go through the Sky Road. I mean, I had to go back to the Sky Road twice in a row just to get back to this point because the story said so. And it's the kind of fun kind of story says so when I'm redoing the same thing I just did, and with no shortcuts to circumvent the time it takes. Also the fact that certain pathways and items cannot be gotten without certain amount of link power, and since the story can only give you a certain amount with the story characters, you have to get more via brother bands, whether it be with IRL people, Legacy Collection, like you do that online, or with the brother bands that are built into Legacy Collection, including a brother band with the original classic Mega Man as well. So there are ways to prevent that for Legacy Collection if you don't have IRL people to do though. Although there is also a feature for people who not have IRL connections. Now for the combat, we're still built the same foundation as Star Force 1. Mega Man only has 3 panels, 8 to select battle cards in order to use, with there generally being a limit to how many battle cards you can select at one time. The big change to this combat system has been the fact that you now have these star cards which are gotten from larger viruses. The star cards essentially are taking regular cards, making them more powerful. You can only equip 3 star cards per folder, and you cannot equip 2 of the same star card, and the higher the stars, the more powerful the weapon is. So there is a hunter aspect when it comes to trying to get these star cards, although I just kind of play with whatever I had. I wouldn't exactly call them a game changer. The main big feature of this game are the forms, which I picked Ninja for my file. The main form was Ninja, which increased the attack of wood battle cards. Also managed to recover on grass panels and could throw ninja stars and do a ninja counter. This is all cool fun, but you get automatic brother band for the other one, the version you didn't pick. Since I didn't pick Zerker, there was an automatic brother band created with NPC in order to give me access to Zerker, allowing me to combine the forms, turning from Ninja to Ninja Zerker, now having the properties of the Zerker aspect layered on top of the Ninja form. However, this does also change the weakness of the form. So since Ninja is wood, it is weak to fire, and since Zerker is electricity, it is weak to wood, so to keep that in mind when it comes to how it affects your weakness for the form. However, in a brother band from the other version, in my case being Saurian, you then have the ability to turn Ninja Saurian, and on the Saurian aspect, if you combine all 3, you become the flat out broken Tribe King. Tribe King busts the damage of every single battle card in your folder, and has this super cool charge shot where it uses all 3 elements as one in this 3-way slash. All 3 ways counting as separate hits on the opponent. It is freaking awesome. The caveat is that it only lasts 3 turns, so on the last turn of it, you could try and prolong it by not opening the custom menu, but it also means not having access to the battle cards as well. So this whole trade-off, on top of the fact that Tribe King does not have a weakness. However, if you don't value bonds at all, there is the optional rogue form you can obtain, with the rogue form having variants for each of the forms as well. The story will not acknowledge the rogue form and gotta go out of your way in order to actually obtain the rogue form, but you can embrace the isolation that solo/rogue actually does as well. So there's a cool aspect gameplay that you could go for rogue form and just essentially say, you know what, screw bonds, they just hold me back. Just ignore the bonds that you have to have in the story, which means that's have link power, which means there should be more penalty, but hey, rogue form also has not as high the benefits of the tribe forms, but also doesn't have the weakness of them either. A lot of the dungeons when it comes to Star Force 2 do have this more back and forth mentality, where you are trying to go back and forth or to get certain objects or certain hurts in order to actually progress, which can make not finding them a bit more frustrating. Specifically, in this one dungeon that was underwater, they're trying to dig up hurts while trying to follow these clues, but sometimes the clues weren't that great, and I can't really go back and forth for longer than I like to admit, trying to follow the herds, so I can progress and fight the boss. And that one just kind of irked me, but Star Force 1 had a similar kind of dungeon of dig up hurts, look around, where is it, oh come on, where is it? It was the fact that the encounter in Star Force 2 is emphasized as a complaint, but honestly, I'm not sure Legacy Collection changed how often the encounter in Star Force 2 happens, but didn't really find it much of an issue. There were certain points where there was an encounter within a few steps after one that just happened, but those were generally very rare, and there was an entire major dungeon where entire encounters were full-on disabled as the dungeon was going on because of how massive it was and how many moving parts you also have going on with it to try to keep track of. So there was that whole entire thing. I guess I don't know how to change the Legacy Collection, but that's just what I experienced this go-around. Unfortunately, side quests are still the same method as Star Force 1, where while it is easier to start a side quest now since you don't have to find the EM waiver to get to them, you can still only do them one at a time, with Omegasys once again scolding you if you try to accept another side quest while having one already accepted. So I still have my gripe to only have one at a time, especially when there can once again be several in the same area, so once again means a lot more back and forth work that just feels unnecessary, especially when the locales are now a bit bigger to explore, whether it be just as Geo or as Mega Man with the EM wave roads. Now for the game's text, which safe to say about Star Force 1, the font is big and easy to read no matter what screen you're really on. You still have the little white text when it comes to the locale on the bottom right, reminding you where you are, and the dialog boxes still don't take up the entirety of the window box, which still looks funny to me. Although we'll note that one change when it comes to the star carriers is the fact when it comes to NPCs, they now have way less space to give information about them, so instead they only really have like either their like or their disinterest listed, and that's it. So you don't get every NPC having like their general message and then like, oh, here's now their secret on top of it. It's kept short when it comes to the NPCs, and it's only really with the player and other players do you really get the full depth of it. Although the auto butter band you make does have to also get details automatically filled in, such as this is a part of the information the game went with to give my brother band. Okay, this is the information. This is apparently a dialogue box he has to say. So, there is that aspect. Star Force 2 in this collection also has the other benefits from the Legacy Collection, like the being able to add in a brother band from the other version of the game. So for me, being able to add in these brother bands that had the Saurian aspects, I could use Tribe King or Ninja Saurian, or the whole entire aspect of being able to just change certain aspects of the gameplay, like change how much health, change the encounter rate, if it bugs you, stuff like that, in order to help you out, and the added voice acting when it comes to combat, and Geo shouting out EM wave change on the air, although I wish they voiced it for the villains, because they too also go EM wave change on the air. So that would have been cool if they got a bit of voice acting, but they would have had to voice act all the villains in the game and everything, so I get why they didn't. It's just like, you know, when you start having the villains in the same call out, it would have been cool to include. Overall, I still think Star Force 2 is great because the forms are fun to use and everything, and some of the quirks changed for combat are just fun. On top of the fact that the boss battles themselves also have now their own fun little quirks where they try to do certain stuff, like, oh, this boss has these two rocks on the stage, where it tries to do the tidal wave, you try to block the rocks, you'll take a hit because it goes to the barrier, and stuff like that when it comes to combat, and also even the optional opponents you can go against. Sure, having you fight some of the bosses from the first game was a bit much, especially since they're not changed too much, but hey, I guess more the merrier. The padding in the game isn't excessive, but you can feel that certain things are moving slower than they should, and we need to get a move on and everything. Like, come on here. I much should have gotten to the point better, and the Sky Road really needed shortcuts. I'm not supposed to have them, but I can't find them. Other people can't find them. We're already supposed to shortcuts are supposed to exist. It should have just been something you have gotten as you progress to the story and everything, rather than something that seems to be more hidden away and everything. So like I said about Star Force 2, I still think it's great and a fun game, and the issues are outweighed by the positives in this title. That's about Star Force 2. Alrighty then, good day.